Okay, so I'm going to do this for you guys just because I love you. It's something super special, and I'm going to do my best Venom impression. I've tried it a couple times now, it hurts my throat, but as I said, I'm willing to do it for you people.
We are Venom.
Love you. Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to another new release review. And for today, I will be covering Venom. So Venom was directed by Ruben Fleischer, stars Tom Hardy, Michelle Williams, and Riz Ahmed. And Venom follows Eddie Brock, a down-on-his-luck reporter who comes in contact with an alien symbiote which bonds with him. And then he becomes, this sort of anti-hero Venom and that whole thing, but yeah, well, whatever, right? So to kick off the positives, is actually going to be Tom Hardy and I guess Venom as well as a character. Tom Hardy, I really enjoyed as Eddie Brock in this movie. When he is as the reporter Eddie Brock, he's great. You can tell that he is really passionate about what he does. He likes to dig deep into his stories and get nice and dirty and just right into it. No puff pieces for him. He likes the dirty stuff. He likes to really dig into people and just pull the weeds right out. And then Venom as a character, although a little less of a character, I guess more so the dynamic that they share, this kind of like bromance they have for each other, this kind of respect, also misunderstanding and like love-hate relationship. I really enjoyed that dynamic they shared. It was just fun to watch. It was fun to hear them talk. A lot of the time, Venom was just kind of talking in the back of his head. And that, to me, though, that kind of back and forth that they have all the time, like Eddie Brock's just kind of a wimp and Venom's like this go-getter and he's super aggressive and everything, that I really enjoyed. I thought it was really funny. I thought it worked well for the movie. And it was definitely by far the best part of the movie. Next to the fact that this movie is just kind of plain dumb fun entertainment. Like, that's basically the way I can describe this movie. If you're gonna go in and really try to be a critic about it, you're not going to enjoy it. If you can't tell, for the critics' scores, the critics are really hating this movie. It has about a 31 on Metacritic, I believe, and from Rotten Tomatoes it has like 33%, 26%. It bounces around pretty frequently throughout the day. But then the audience score appeared, and it's at 88%, and that is above A Star Is Born. So it's another one, just critics versus audiences. It's not overall a great film, but it is entertaining. That's, I feel like, how I go into movies. Like, I'm just kind of half and half. I'm a huge fan of movies in general, and I love every movie until I don't. But I also like to be critical of them because that's what I'm supposed to do on here. So I give you guys a little bit of both, right? Like, that's where the positives come in. Hey, it's big, dumb, fun entertainment. That's the fan in me. But then the negatives, well, that's the critical part. Next is the comedy in this movie. The comedy actually worked very well for me, and that's another thing that I wasn't really expecting. The trailers for this kind of made it seem like a darker take on the character. I mean, Venom's dark already, but there was rumors circulating that it was going to be R-rated, and even from the trailers, it did look like it was going to be a darker movie, especially in that first trailer, and even the second one. It looked like it was aiming for kind of a more darker experience. Now, there are some darker things in here. I don't necessarily feel like it's the most aggressive PG-13 movie I've watched. I think there has been worse out there. It does definitely push the PG-13 rating, but the comedy is something that really surprised me in this movie, and it did work very well. I laughed pretty frequently throughout this movie. For me, it was some cheap laughs, but I'm okay with laughing at cheap laughs. I did have fun watching it, and I did laugh pretty frequently, which is something that I wasn't expecting. And lastly on the positives is the end credits scene. There are two end credits scenes. The first one is the good one that's leading up for a sequel, which I think is probably going to get because it just premiered last night from where I am in Canada, and it broke box office records for Thursday night premieres in October, so I'm assuming it's probably going to make bank, and it will more than likely get a sequel. But with the way that the sequel is set up through this scene, I'm excited for the sequel. The other end credit scene, you don't really need to see it. It's not a spoiler or anything like that. It's literally just a clip from the upcoming Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse animated movie, so if you want to stick around for that, go for it. If not, you're not missing anything special. And for the middle ground for me, there actually is one, and I was iffy on this one. I almost gave it a negative, and that's the CGI in this movie, because at times, CGI is really, really not good, and it's super noticeable, and it's super annoying, and it's just in your face. And at times it did detract from the movie for me, so that's usually where I'd give it a negative. But then there are times that it does actually look very good and very clean, so I don't know if it was just like the reshoots looked really good, or maybe the original movie looked good and the reshoots looked bad, or maybe they just didn't have enough to go around. I don't really know. So it kind of ends up in the middle ground because there was some really good, cool stuff to watch, but then there also was a lot of really noticeable stuff that was like, oh my god, it was a bit of a hindrance. And now for the negatives, guys. In the negatives, there really is no particular order for these negatives because they are all pretty well just one giant negative. That kind of beats down on the movie a little bit. So I'll go off the top of my head is the villain of the movie, whether it's Riz Ahmed or the Symbiote Riot. They're both horrible. Riz Ahmed, although he gives a solid performance, his character is just so generic. He is a guy who owns a corporation and doesn't care for other people and wants to experiment with science and stuff. That's him. And then Riot is the more aggressive version of Venom that also wants to kill people and doesn't care who he hurts and stuff. And that's pretty much it. They're both like super generic, run-of-the-mill villains. I didn't care for either one of them. They didn't do anything for me. Like I said, they're just these super generic, just base villains. So, I mean, that to me is a big negative because they could have done something really cool and they really just did. Next, the third act in particular, the final fight. The third act overall really brought the movie down for me because for the first 2/3 of this movie, I was actually having quite a bit of fun. It did still have its negatives, of course, but I was still having a fun time. The third act definitely did bring it down a lot for me, and especially that final fight, the one you see in the trailer between Venom and Riot, was horrible. You could not tell what was going on. That was the moment, like that whole thing. The CGI did not look polished at all to me in that. It was just a mess of like this liquid smashing into each other. It was like watching waves fight. Like it was really annoying. They tried to make it really fast-paced and intense, but instead it was just the camera swirling around, explosions, liquid goop flying everywhere. It was just a mess, and I hated it. It could have been really cool. Instead, it looked like absolute garbage. You have Venom, who is awesome, and then you have this creature who you see in the trailers. He can make his arms turn into big axes and things like that, like Terminator 2 style, and it could have been something really special, and instead, you could barely make out what was going on. Last two things was the whole Symbiote Backstory, because they do try to explain the Symbiote Backstory. It's just, rather than it being like the way it was in like the original Spider-Man animated series, like, hey, these astronauts went out there, got the symbiote attached to them, crashed into Earth. The symbiote's out now. Like, they try to make this whole full backstory, and it's stupid, and I hated it, and I don't need to say any more about it because that's spoiler territory. But yeah, it's stupid, and I hate it, and I don't know why it's in the movie. You don't need to explain every little thing, Hollywood, and that especially goes for this movie, because that to me was completely pointless. And lastly, is this movie is filled with logical errors, but it's like its own logic, which is the terrible, terrible part. Its own logic is just brutal. Like, it literally collapses on itself multiple times. This is kind of minor spoilery territory. It's not like a huge spoiler warning. It's just things that are like involved in the movie to give you guys examples. Firstly, the symbiote is inside the person. You hear Venom talking in Eddie Brock's head. He says, I'm inside of you. I know all of your thoughts and things like that. So then he like knows what Eddie's gonna do, knows what Eddie's thinking, can talk to him and everything. But then random things happen where after Venom explains that, like 2 seconds later, the phone rings, Eddie looks at it, it's his girlfriend, and then Venom goes, ooh, and who's that? And then Eddie goes, oh, it's no one. But it's like, if you're in his head and you just said that you know everything, then how do you not know who that is? That doesn't make any sense to me. And same thing with how do the symbiotes like know English and everything? Like, I guess them being inside of them kind of explains that. But Venom comes out like talking slang and he's like, oh yeah, I got all kinds of cool shit and stuff like that. And it's like, wait, where did you get all this? Like, it really, really bugged me. And then as well, they go through a lot of trouble to try to explain that there has to be this perfect synchronization between symbiote and the human host in order for there to be an actual bond, rather than the symbiote just killing the human. And then they spend like the whole first half of the movie on that, and then in the whole second half of the movie, the symbiotes are just going around like they're cooties. It's like, oop, I touched you, you're the symbiote now, haha, tag, you're it. Like, what? Why did you spend all that time focusing on that? Just for them to just jump around from body to body. It just, to me, it blows my mind that they would just completely forget it. It's like, they literally went around the table. It's like, okay, you write a scene now, boop. Write a scene now, boom, and they just went around the table, and that was just stupid in my mind, and I picked up on it so easy in the movie, and then it pulled me right out. I would usually give this movie a bit low of a rating because the negatives are huge negatives, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't going to watch this movie again. So for me, if it's fun enough and entertaining enough for me to want to watch again, I gotta bump it up a little bit. So, with all that being said, I'm going to be giving Venom a 6 out of 10. So folks, if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know, what did you think of Venom? And be sure to hit me up on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and the Twitters. Links will be in the description and at the end of the video. And be sure to check my Instagram page every Friday for the Fan Vote Friday. We are going to be going next Friday into the second round of the Halloween Challenge, so be sure to check it out and vote. And as always, folks, thank you so much for watching. And that's a wrap. I have the new Goblin, Venom, and the Sandman.